That opinion, it's so bad. I think you should be canceled. In fact, I think we'll cancel your life. We'll cancel your family relations. We'll cancel your friendships. We'll cancel your job. In fact, you have no place in society now just because you held that opinion once. Hi, my name is John Arthur Fiala, and this has been Opinions Collide today. I'm joined by Mr. Hines. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. That's quite the interesting opening. So, is that the pervasive way of thinking right now, that if your opinion is different than someone else's, you are invalidated as a human, living, breathing, carbon-based life form?
I mean, it seems to be. The thing that kills me, we're taking a break today from the debates just to kind of talk about this. Cancel culture has just invaded our society. We've gotten to this place now where if you said one dumb thing on social media when you were 14, you're now 18, 19. There's one case where someone was in college and they lost everything because they said something nasty on social media. I'm glad I wasn't on social media when I was that age, because it seems to me everyone says something stupid.
Eventually, yeah.
The Bible says in a multitude of words, sin is not lacking. I think that is something that we can all see.
Agreed. Well, Jonathan, I did a video not long ago, and I love when opinions collide, because it's very apropos for our time. And for those who don't know, as host of that show, you have brought some amazing conversations to the airwaves. One of which I thought was really fascinating was on vaccinations. And, you talk about a divisive subject, and a subject who really sort of polarizes people. That is certainly one of them. And what I love about you, man, is you are a young man, but you are very cerebral. Your dad, who's a friend of mine, did a great job with you. I'm not sure, they might have started spoon feeding you some IQ Wheaties when you were just like a toddler. I mean, how did you? I want the audience to know you a little bit, and I hope I don't embarrass you, but did you just always have all this brain power? I mean, what happened there?
Well, whatever I have is by the grace of God, and I love my parents. But one of the things that they really did is they were intentional about parenting. And it's really sad that we have this culture where children are the unfortunate after product of a fun experience. Yeah. And it's gotten to the place where you have these kids on accident or on purpose, and they're kind of there. My parents always asked me, well, why do you think this is important? What do you think about this? And then I would give them a response, often wrong. Yeah. And they would say, well, what do you think about this methodology or this thought process? And they taught me the importance of the question, what do you mean by that?
Yes.
In our culture today, we need to start asking, what do you mean by that? Whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's vaccines, yes, whether it's shootings, school shootings, everyone wants to solve the problem. I'd say there are like 5 people in any one of those that just are bad people, but the rest of America, the other 300 million something, they want to solve the problem. We just have different ideas about how to solve it.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating. There's a correlation that was drawn by a speaker yesterday that I heard that I really, really liked, and it ties into what you just said. They were talking about racial bias, and they were saying that anybody who assumes they don't have a racial bias is absolutely wrong. Everyone has a racial bias.
Agreed.
And the reason for that is that we have been acculturated into a society where race is, in fact, an issue that is very subtly inserted in almost every nuance. So she was saying, this speaker, rather than coming from this place that and she's a white person, so she said, as a white person, I stopped saying, oh no, I don't have a racial bias. I have friends. I like Black people. I abhor what's happening in the world. She started saying, she asked a better question, and the better question was, what does my racial bias look like? How am I engaged in this subconscious sort of centrifuge of racial injustices and maybe inadvertently a participant or complicit in?
Well, I think it's always important to evaluate your own opinions and your own biases. However, I think there are people. I would say that you absolutely, when you see someone, I would go further. I would say you see someone, you judge them by their haircut, you judge them by the color of their skin, you judge them by the facial hair that they do or don't have, you judge them by the clothing that they are wearing. That is something, that is a judgment that you make. You make a judgment on everything that you see. And that's not wrong. That is not a bad form of discrimination. We all discriminate. The question is do we discriminate negatively? Do we say, because that person has that haircut, I think X, Y, and Z negatively, or are you open to the content of their character? Because that person has that skin color, because is that something that is that something that's actually valid in judging their character?
Correct.
We need to be looking at the content of people's character, and this situation where you have people who are, they're not only judging one group of people by the content of their or the color of their skin, the amount of melanin in their skin. They're saying that because you are white, because you are black, you then are X. It doesn't matter which side that comes from. And by the way, I am sick and tired of white people kneeling for slavery they didn't do. Okay? Let's not do that. Let's talk about actual things that we can change. If we want to talk about police reform, we want to talk about how police interact with African Americans. Let's talk about that. But kneeling for slavery, that a lot of these people are from Russia or Europe. They never were involved in that.
Are you referring to like the Kaepernick sort of paradigm or something else?
I'm thinking more recently with the George Floyd. You have these people who are at these protests, and they are kneeling for slavery. They are kneeling for, and if you're kneeling to say what happened to George Floyd is wrong, I get that. Full stop. I'm with you. But if you're kneeling because you are guilty of slavery that happened 150 years ago, you're not. And what you're going to do is, and this is where I really diverge from a lot of people here, you're going to start creating racists. And what I mean by that is you tell someone, because you are this skin color, because you have this much melanin in your skin, you fit in this demographic. There are going to be some people like me who roll their eyes, laugh it off, and walk away and say, whatever, I'm not guilty of that, and I want this violence to stop. I want these bad things to stop happening. And then you're going to have people who say, well, maybe I am a racist. And now you've radicalized someone. You've put them in a box, and you've narrowed that group down, and you've distilled them. You've given them a tribe, a very bad tribe.
Wow. That's an interesting perspective. So they said that perhaps the most polarizing time in our recent history was during the Obama administration because of the evolution of the Tea Party and then the subsequent radicalization of the Tea Party. I mean, do you buy into that, or was that happening before that, or what?
Well, what I would say, racial politics in 2008, I don't have the statistic in front of me, but racial politics, everyone felt that race was on the mend. Racial relations were on the mend. I think it was 8 or 12% thought that race relations were a problem in America in 2008. Coming out of that in 2016, we are more divided than ever. And part of the issue that I see is we've told a lot of people, because you are white, you are racist. Not this law is a problem, this zoning is an issue, these policy issues need to be resolved. We've created an unfalsifiable claim. And that's something that people get upset about. I don't know if there are too many people radicalized from the Tea Party. I think there are a lot of white identitarians that really, they're white identitarians. They've latched onto that and they've drawn a terrible conclusion from this, and they're acting rather vilely. But at the same time, if you tell someone that they're racist because of their skin, there's going to be a small segment of people that say, okay, I'll own that. I'm not defending that for a second.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying we're pushing people, and we're creating this division instead of building people up, instead of looking for things that we can actually change. We're talking about race, and we're talking about it in the wrong way. We're stirring up these feelings, and we're saying if you don't agree, if you have a different solution, then you're part of the problem. If it's not my solution.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think a lot of people think in black and white terms, and this is a complex problem. I mean, it's a problem that goes back about 400 plus 500 years. The thing that's really kind of a weird spin to this, I think, is that, like, I've heard in conversations where someone will say, look, that happened a long time ago. That was 400 years ago. And I will say this, I was born in 1963. If you look at the Emancipation Proclamation, it was signed in 1863. That means that a centurion, somebody of 100 years or older, would have been able to touch me on the head as a newborn, and they would have been born into slavery.
Yes.
So it wasn't as long ago as a lot of people think.
Oh no, I totally agree, and I think that's kind of a weak argument. There are things that have definitely, I mean, Jim Crow alone is something that significant amount of people can remember. People your age can remember that.
Yeah.
And it was a very real thing. And I mean, again, I'd like to just say, if there's some form of Jim Crow still around, let's get rid of it, and let's go ahead and prosecute the SOBs who are still pushing that. Like, if let's find that politician, let's find that law.
But can you not argue that to some degree it's happening through the zoning and the way that you have some radically different, like, I was shocked. So I'm not from Texas. And I remember the schools in New York in the 70s being different than this, but you could go to Sunnyside, a community that has liquor stores, chicken places, and churches, and everything else is burnt up or boarded up, which is egregious. And these kids are going to these schools that are so underfunded that you can barely get a decent book. Now, where I live, which is Klein School District, reputed to be one of the best school districts in Texas. And I went to Klein because I had younger kids at the time. And the Klein kids, my kids, and this is a while ago because my kids are adults now, they gave them these computers, these convertible, like computers that I couldn't believe it. I was like, damn, this is nicer than my computer. It was a deal that was like a touchpad and a keypad, and it integrated to the school software. So there's an inequity there.
Oh, I agree 110%. And by the way, that's why I'm a huge fan of charter schools, because what you have is the same folks who've been in charge of the inner city in most states have been in charge of the inner city, like in Atlanta for about, I think is it Atlanta or New Orleans, 100 years. And instead of actually taking those funds, our public school system is a really interesting conversation. We can get into that. You now have this circumstance where you have 3 or 4 or 5 administrators per teacher.
Wow.
That is a systemic corruption. I wouldn't necessarily call it racism, but it's certainly a systemic corruption. And if you had school choice, that is the number one proven thing that actually allows families, whatever their color, to look for a better school. And what that does with the school? It says, oh, we're getting paid per kid.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to actually vie for their attention.
Right.
And I know so many public school teachers who are dying for that kind of competition because their administrators have no desire to change because the status quo is the status quo.
Yeah.
And they don't really care about the kids. There are I've got a lot of public school teacher friends that have been through the ringer on that. And that's a policy. And right there, that inequity, that's a policy that we can change.
Yeah.
And I say, let's change it. That's something that conservatives have been asking for a long time, is charter schools. And what it does, though, is it takes away the power of the unions. It takes away the stranglehold that they have, and that's where a lot of people get uncomfortable.
Well, would the argument be that there would still be inequity because the charter schools that are in my neighborhood, right, compared to the charter schools in Sunnyside, there still would be an issue?
There's never going to be an equality of outcome. What we can do, though, is provide the equality of opportunity. And where you end up with a charter school is you end up with a free market situation. And as long as the government is there to prevent fraud, the free market produces some great results. You're going to have it doesn't matter what your skin color is. If there's a better school that's performing better, they're working harder to train your kids, and the grades go up. Everyone's excited about that. People are going to send their kid there. People will move. I mean, am I wrong? You just said you were at Klein.
I went to Klein because of the school district. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
And so that's one of those situations where Klein benefits a lot from the taxes there. I live in Klein.
Yeah, they're very high. They're expensive to live there.
It's ridiculous. But if it was more focused on actual vouchers, that inequity would change. It may be that Klein could keep that. However, they would have to do it through being competitive. They wouldn't be able to do it just because you have all of these millionaires living in that area. They would have to actually be competitive. The same is true of the inner city schools. Mm-hmm. And that's a great example. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a policy that we can change. We can change today, and in 10 years, there will be a difference, a positive difference for communities that have been, I mean, Jim Crow has lasting scars.
Oh, yeah.
It has lasting scars, and it needs to, and that's why we have these programs, these placement programs,
right?
And
yeah, the equal opportunity type initiatives that colleges have, the quotas that colleges have used, etc.
And those have actually proven to be somewhat harmful, although very, very well intended. You have a lot of people who get in because of affirmative action, and they only had to meet the bar for affirmative action. But once they got into school, they didn't know that the bar was set higher, and it has nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with the expectation you set on the child.
Yeah. Well, I would hope that if you were going to Harvard, you were like a really smart person. I understand that a lot of Africans are now in Harvard, for example, because they're just, scholastically, they excel, and they dominate a lot of that. But, I had a conversation the other day, and I got a little impassioned because I documented sort of the historicity of systemic racism. And it is interesting when you think about it. And for those who missed that conversation, I'm going to reiterate that a little bit and then get some of your thoughts on some of this stuff. But in 1970, there was a purposeful attempt by the government to start to affect the Black communities. And that sounds like a conspiracy theory until you start really looking at some of the facts. So in 1970, they defunded inner city schools, and those schools used to have trades that they would teach, and you become a journeyman. In 4 years, you graduated from school. You were a plumber, you were an AC repairman, you were someone who could go get a job making a really good wage. That was defunded, and it was specifically targeting those Black communities all across the United States. Fast forward another decade. Then you have 1980. Now you have the introduction of crack. Crack was highly addictive, while Caucasian counterparts were doing cocaine in the 80s and basically getting a slap on the wrist or a fine. Blacks were being put in jail for 10, 20, 30 years for crack cocaine. And it also started ushering in the age of for-profit prisons. By the 1990s, when the Jolly Clintons got into office and everybody was celebrating this guy playing the saxophone, he was building some of the most complex and expensive jail systems in the world. And all of a sudden, jails were for profit. And there were stakeholders that had money bet on the fact that people need to be arrested and incarcerated.
Absolutely.
And we became the most incarcerating nation on the planet, which proportionately is insane and disproportionately was all targeted towards people of color. Then you fast forward to 2000, 10 more years, and the Bush administration implemented this whole program, this faith-based initiative, supposedly with the churches. But what they did was they particularly targeted some of the mega black churches, and they said, hey, we don't want you guys talking about Black Lives Matter. We don't want you talking about bigotry, racism, systemic racism, none of that stuff. You want our government money, shut the hell up and sit in that corner and just continue to toe the company line. So now, then you go to 2010, you've got the Obama administration who has used NAFTA and essentially exported all the jobs out of the United States and ushered in what became one of the most divisive times in with this racial division. So we see this systematic progression. I know
Absolutely.
That's a lot.
No,
but what are your thoughts around the systematic nature of this?
I would love to go point by point on that, because you're absolutely correct. LBJ with the Greater Cities Initiative, his whole thing, well, you can sum it up in his own words, and I can't use all of them because A, I'm white, and B, it's an FCC station. However, he said when creating the welfare state, this racist piece of human debris said, we will have those N-words voting for us for the next 100 years. LBJ is a Democrat.
He's a Democrat.
He's a Democrat. And by the way, I'm not trying to play politics here. I will say, however, conservatives since Lincoln really didn't he wasn't all that big on freeing the blacks. He was a product of his party. Okay, mm-hmm. He understood he had to do that because the North was the conservative abolitionist movement. And by the way, talking about abolitionist movement, did you hear about the abolitionist? They defaced his statue.
I've heard a number of statues being defaced throughout the Deep South.
You know, they've been attacking. This is the problem when you don't know your history. We've been attacking some of these statues are actually abolitionist statues. People who were Black Lives Matter before it was a slogan.
Yeah.
And people who said that this slavery thing is awful. These are conservatives who've been from the beginning. But you look at the history of the Republican Party, it's always been the party of empowerment. And you look at the Reconstruction era, that was going to be so much better until John Wilkes Booth, a Democrat, assassinated Lincoln, a Republican. Mm-hmm. And the Democrats got in and things went to the dumpster. We had Jim Crow for an additional almost 100 years, give or take. And then LBJ comes in and he says, look, let's switch up the strategy here. Let's institute a welfare system that incentivizes the destruction of the minority family. You had Margaret Sanger, who was one of the only women who spoke in front of the KKK. Yeah. Because that was, in addition to being a racist organization, it's a sexist organization. Yeah. But she was one of the only women speaking in front of the KKK.
Tell them what she founded.
She was a friend of Adolf Hitler. She was big into eugenics, and her biggest eugenics project was the biggest success of the last century and into this century, Planned Parenthood.
Planned Parenthood.
She wanted to reduce the amount of melanated babies on the face of the earth. That was her whole objective and agenda. And man, she's done a good job.
Yeah.
What an evil, evil thing. And she got away with it.
Yeah. Well, so for those of you who are not familiar, eugenics relates to this junk science that was indicating that African American people of African American descent were inferior, shape of their skull, size of their brain, all of which was inferior. The Aryan race was thought to be superior. Much of that research was done in America, but Germany and America actually collaborated on the entire eugenics concept, project, and cultivation. And then you have Ms. Singer, who comes along and starts putting Planned Parenthood centers in all the dark or people of color communities all around the country with government funding to do it.
I believe it's 14 million African American children did not get a chance to see the light of day. Whether or not you believe that the life in the womb is a life, I think everyone should be upset that that was a targeted removal of a certain part of our gene pool. And they wanted to do that purely because of the color of the parents and the color of the child.
Wow.
That is egregious and that's ugly. So you've got Margaret Sanger, you've got LBJ. I agree that I do not think the system as a whole, it's one of those things where when people get mad at me, and my conservative friends get mad at me when I say that, 9/11, I'm sorry, that was at least tacitly allowed by the administration at the nicest way. We had intelligence, we could have stopped that. And if you really want to get into conversations about that, we can. It's an interesting conversation. But people get mad at me when they say, oh, so you mean there's some sort of deep state? This is before Trump got in office.
That's before deep state talk was cool.
And it's like, yeah, no, I don't believe our whole government is focused. They don't all go to the Pentagon and have these, like the whole Pentagon doesn't come into the room and call to order our secret meeting. However, I think there are bad actors. And there are some really bad actors in our government, in our systems. And we've been electing them over and over and over again who are racist. We elect some of these people. However, they have set themselves up as the beneficiary or as the benevolent rulers who are giving people welfare in exchange for breaking up their families. And you look at the 50s and 60s, the minority divorce rate, the African American divorce rate was what, about 10%? And I believe the Anglo was like 80 or something like that. The African American family was significantly stronger. I don't have those statistics in front of me. I apologize. Mm-hmm. But now
it's the opposite.
It's the opposite. And that is by design.
Yeah.
And that is in certain cities and locations where they have attacked that family for the very purpose of destroying it.
So one of the ways that attack took place, for those listening to this conversation and going, wow, I've never heard that before. One of the ways that attack was very successful was through the welfare state. A woman was incentivized, if she had children, she would get bigger and bigger checks with one proviso, that the black man had to be the hell out of her house. If you had a black man living in your house, you were not qualified for welfare. But if you did not have a black man living in your house and you had a bunch of picnics, as they were called, and I'm not trying to be racist when I say that, those little picnics were a $sign attached to each one of them. And so it started to systematically destabilize the family, and that destabilization was taking place largely in the 1970s, because pre-1970, the organization of, for an example, the Martin Luther Kings and Malcolm X's were being financed by black business people that were earning livable wages, that were contributing to the shaping of a movement. And all of that was decimated when the nuclear family started being systematically disassembled. So we're going to take a break and pause. This is proving to be a fascinating conversation. I knew it would be. This is When Opinions Collide. Jonathan Fiella, host, is live in studio this week, and I'm thrilled to have you here. We're going to take a break. You're listening to Edge Radio Network, When Opinions Collide, 1540 AM, 101.7 FM. Stay right there. We'll be back in just a moment.
We work our whole lives to support our families. With one accident or illness, it can all be gone in an instant. Now there's a smart, affordable way to protect your family. Go to findhealthbenefits.com and discover low-cost life insurance for as little as $2 per month. Add to that a tax-deferred annuity that can help you protect your assets and grow your money for retirement. Learn more Go to findhealthbenefits.com or call 877-235-6094. A critical illness can strike without warning and wipe out your life savings. In fact, it's the number one reason for bankruptcy. Find Health Benefits offers an affordable solution. Get up to $50,000 if you get cancer, stroke, or a heart attack, giving you the peace of mind to focus on getting better while the plan helps you to pay your bills and medical expenses. Learn more. Go to findhealthbenefits.com or call 877-235-6094. 66% of seniors spend more time shopping for cable TV than Medicare plans. Most say because it's just too confusing. Laws change every year. The wrong plan could cost you thousands and prevent you from seeing the doctors you want. Introducing FindHealthBenefits.com. Save time, save money, see specialists without referrals. Go to FindHealthBenefits.com or call 877-235-6094 for this informative brochure.
Society is on the edge. Let's bring them back. Edge Radio, because truth still matters.
We work our whole lives to support our families. With one accident or
Edge Radio Network, where we have conscious conversation.
Edge is about love, relationships, and healing.
Edge Radio is for everyone and about everyone.
Edge
Radio is about recreating a beautiful body.
Edge is about community, synergy, and empowerment.
Edge is about being kind, compassionate, and loving to all.
And Edge Radio is about beauty and fashion.
各位观众 ，Edge Radio 是大家最好听的一个电台，不要忘记听哦。Yeah, I love Radio. You can hear all about the topic and join us soon.
Edge is about being on the edge and not jumping. Yes.
When people stop talking to each other, society is on the edge. Let's bring them back. Edge Radio, because truth still matters. Been feeling a little edgy lately? Listen to Edge Radio. That'll push you over the top. 1540 AM and 101.7 FM.
lethal force is not authorized. There needs to be that situation where it's not just officers, because it's not fair for internal affairs. It's not fair to the officers in internal affairs. You've got these officers who are like, man, Bob and I were partners 10 years, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or Bob and I might be partners in 5 or 10 years. And if I hang out Bob, or if I hang Bob out to dry, and Steve is Bob's partner, Steve's not going to have my back someday. And that's a bad situation to put internal affairs in. And what you have is you've developed a corruption like you're talking about. So let's talk about actual things that can change. Let's not say systemic problem. Let's fix the system. Let's not get mad about this nebulous thing. If there's a policy, let's focus in on that policy, and let's take internal affairs out of the hands of police. Let's put this in the hands of a governing body of citizens that say, look, this officer has received 5 complaints for using the N-word, all right, for example. And there's 2 types of discrimination. I believe this was Thomas Sowell who brought this out. He said there's type 1 and type 2. And I believe if I remember correctly, he defined type 1 as that person has this skin color, therefore they have these traits. And that's racism. Type 2 is this person wears their hat backwards, therefore I think I put him in the group of people who wear their hat backwards. And there were 5 people who wore their hat backwards, they committed robberies, and they're the minority of that subset. And now that's type 2. A lot of officers are guilty of type 1, okay? Full stop. We need to look at those guys, and we probably need to remove them. The ones that are guilty of type 2, that's what everyone does.
Right.
And what we need to do is weed out the 2, and we need to go ahead. And I believe that we need to train officers more. You look at some of the crime in Germany and the crime in the UK, where they do have lower citizen death rates. The crime rate is higher because a lot of times they'll let the person get away. So at the same time, I want to balance that. I think that there's always room for improvement for an institution. The police is no exception. Defunding them, I'm not sure if that's a good idea. Demilitarizing, very important. Putting the onus of who is taking these officers who are exhibiting racist tendencies. Derek Chauvin was how many times? 17, I believe.
Oh yeah, violation after violation. It was unbelievable.
It should be a 2 or 3 strike rule, and we were talking about this in the last show that I did. We said, look, we need to have a system in place. It needs to be citizen oversight, and we need to go ahead and actually take these guys out of the force long before they get to kneel on George Floyd's neck.
Yeah.
But that's divisive if you say that police are fixable.
I love the idea you have about citizen oversight. I think that's brilliant. And I would hope that that's at least going to be debated. Because if you got a quote unquote jury of your peers that represented the diversity of the community, and that would have to be a prerequisite, because we couldn't have some, rigged jewelry, so to speak, either. But if that oversight was in place and the laws and the constraints were given, the perimeters, if you will, were given, that would solve a lot of the problem, because cops right now operate with impunity in some cases. And, my brother's a cop in California. Love him. Used to be a Marine for many years. To me, he's the perfect cop. Like, he is the perfect cop. And I can't say that just because he's my brother. I'm saying that because I know his character. He's badass. He is a black belt. He's a 3rd-degree black belt. He's a sergeant major in the Marine Corps with 4 tours of duty. This dude can kill you 5 ways to Sunday without you even knowing.
But you notice those people are always the most quiet, most respectful.
That's exactly what I was going to say. But you meet him and he is so gentle and so loving and so kind. And he is going to talk you down. If you're sitting there swinging a baseball bat at him, he's not gonna hold his gun and say, I'm gonna blow your head off. He's gonna say, put the bat down. Let's talk about how we get what you need to get done. And he's talked so many people down while the rookies are behind him ready to pop capping somebody. So, I also think there's a certain amount of maturity it takes to be a cop. If you're just junked up on testosterone and you got a power trip and your girlfriend's cheating on you and whatever else is going on in your life and you want to go lord it over somebody, go find another job.
So, and I agree that more training is necessary. What I would rely on, however, when we talk about defunding the police, if I remember correctly, Ferguson got a significant cut. We saw an increased rate in crime there. It was astronomical. And do you know which community suffered the most from that?
Their community, the one they ripped apart.
The one that ripped apart. And the police don't want to go there anymore. Same is true of Baltimore. After the Freddie Gray thing, if I don't have the statistic in front of me, I apologize, but it's 4 or 5 times at least was what the increase was in crime. Who does that affect? Yeah. That affects the community that is suffering from this. Look, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Fix the problem. Fix the problem. Don't introduce new problems. And by the way, I have nothing against citizen policing. I do have a problem with unmitigated. If you have a situation where you have the KKK or radical race-based, and some people will point at the Black Panthers. You look at the Ahmaud Arbery. What you had there was citizens trying to enforce the law, supposedly, and what we had was a disaster, and it ended up in tragedy. Mm-hmm. And frankly, just because I brought it up, I have to say, Ahmaud Arbery, bad shoot. Yeah. Bad shoot. Those guys should go to jail. And supposedly the cameraman says that the guy ran up with a shotgun. I think it was a shotgun. Was yelling racial epithets. Yeah. So I think we can close that book and say that was a bad one.
That was those good old boys hunting, and they got themselves some live prey that they could hunt on. The kid was basically jogging, and even if he ran on a site, he didn't have like copper piping that he was running with that he just stole. I mean, there was nothing that would implicate him in that way.
I will say, I'm white. Every time someone invites me to go onto someone else's property, it's under construction. No, because I know that there are people out there like that. It doesn't, and I'm sorry, I don't know. These guys were saying things that make me believe that they were racist. Yeah. However, I always have had a fear of going onto a construction site for that very reason.
But that's reasonable. But I can tell you that I've done it numerous times. Like I have stopped, I've seen a house, I've done it with my girlfriend a few times.
My mom does this.
Different things. And there's a presumption if a cop comes up and they see you in a construction site, I don't look like I'm some vandal. So I'm imagining that you're not going to assume that I'm here to try to steal the freaking copper pipes or whatever. I'm here to look at the house because maybe I want to buy a house in that neighborhood. I'm an investor, whatever the case might be. So, I think questions can be asked. And if you've got knuckleheads that just feel like they should jump on a pickup truck and go shoot somebody or corner somebody, to me, that was a vigilante move. That went beyond citizen policing. It was a bunch of hicks that decided they were going to hunt down, hurt somebody, kill them, whatever.
And they need to be brought to justice. And that's one of those things. It's like the system can work. But one of the things that I really want to see is I want to see the justice system overhauled. Okay? Every once in a while, you need a tune-up. And by the way, I'm not opposed to the death penalty. I'm just opposed to the way it's set up right now. There are a lot of people who've been put on death row, and it was purely circumstantial evidence. Yeah. Okay. For example, that's a bad thing.
Yeah. A lot of them have been executed, but there's been a lot of innocent people.
Executed, and part of that is you need 2 reliable witnesses. Reliable witnesses, not biased. You need 2 reliable witnesses before you put someone to death. There are a lot of things that need to be put in place there, but if people understand that sort of behavior is not allowed and that there's a challenge with that, if you enforce the laws that are already on the books, mm-hmm. I think we can get a long way. But again, some folks, this opinion, if I say this in the wrong room, will get me labeled a racist. And I mean, I don't know. Does it sound racist to you? or does it sound like an opinion?
See, the thing is, I know you, and I know you're not a racist. I know you, and so I do have a little bias because I like you. I know you. I think it can be misinterpreted sometimes. I think some people can take it the wrong way.
It's because the language is charged.
Yeah.
It's because the language is charged. And, you know, the other day we were in here in between shows and someone says, well, do Black Lives Matter? It's like, yeah, Black Lives Matter. Full stop. I won't add anything to that. Black Lives Matter, full stop. I think the movement Black Lives Matter has added extra charge to the conversation. And it's a very, very smart way to create political hay. They've added, in addition to Black Lives Matter, police are systemically racist. And that's where some people can't get on board. Say, is it systemically racist, or are we looking at certain departments and certain officers? And are we looking at a broken system that needs to be fixed? But, you know, I've got a ton of officers who are friends. They are the most loving, gentle, strong men of all races, and they do not have a racist bone in their body. They are sheepdogs. They're true sheepdogs. They're not wolves in a sheepdog collar. They are sheepdogs. They are there to protect. But we need to weed out the wolves, and we need to go ahead and get those people. And yes, there are situations that merit that. However, I would say, someone was tracking it, since 2016. The rates of unarmed perpetrators or suspects who have been shot has gone down steadily. And right now, last year it was 386 or something like that, white, 250 or something black that were shot. And then 10 of those were unarmed. 6 of those charged the officer, grabbed for the gun, did whatever.
Yeah.
Don't go for the gun.
Don't do that. That'll get you killed.
That'll get you killed. And
I
then,
tend
and then,
to agree.
And then 2 of those, the unarmed, one charged. I don't know what happened with the other. And then the other 2 were prosecuted. The officer was thrown into the jail.
Yeah.
And you know, that's how it should be.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you know.
So I think that's going down. However, if I say that, I'm immediately labeled as a racist, and that's by some people. By some people. And it's like, if you have a conversation, if you think we need to ban all guns, that's one conversation, right? If you think we need to for school shootings, if you think we need to arm or fortify a school, that's another conversation. However, both groups tar and feather each other as not caring about the actual issue.
Right.
They think that it's charged. Yeah. And my thing is these things shouldn't be charged.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Wow. Well, we're just about out of time. This has been a outstanding conversation with you about a very delicate and intricate issue. So for those just joining us, give us a quick summary of When Opinions Collide, the concepts, what types of subjects you're bringing, and how people can get in touch with you.
Absolutely. So When Opinions Collide is a show that gets 2 different worldviews together. By proxy, we have people that believe a certain way, and we have a conversation to hopefully change each other's minds, inform, build up. Look, at the end of the day, evil prospers in ignorance, truth prospers in the light. What we want to do is we want to get the truth out. If we find the truth, that is the goal, and that's what When Opinions Collide is about. We want to get people to start talking. It's like that one lady, Carolyn Boroshenko. She went to a MAGA rally and said, "Hey, I don't agree with any of these people, but they're not crazy. They mean well." I mean, that's the way it used to be in our politics, in our culture. Maybe we should go back to that time and actually start listening to each other. And that's what the show's about. Find us on the Twitter @OpinionsCollide. Tweet us what our next show should be about. We've got another anti-vaccine debate coming up. Talking with some folks on 6-day creationism versus atheism. We got some fun stuff coming.
Oh, that's good. That's going to be a fun conversation. I'm looking forward to that one. 6 days versus creationism. That's a great topic. Well, folks, you've been listening to When Opinions Collide. This is Jonathan Fiala, child prodigy that is now a full-grown prodigy. It's been a great conversation, Jonathan. I always enjoy talking to you. Be sure to tune in every Thursday from 11 to 12 When Opinions Collide here on the Edge Radio Network. And remember, in order for evil to prevail, it is only necessary for good men not to do anything. So I want to encourage you to do something that is going to contribute towards the betterment of mankind. Thank you for joining us. Up next, Matchmaker Hotline with Amber Neal. It's going to be an interesting one. I understand there's alcohol involved today.
Oh my goodness.
So stay tuned, folks, when Opinion Collides is done, and we are about to go into Matchmaker Hotline here on the Edge Radio Network.
Edge Radio Network, where we have conscious conversation.
Edge is about love, relationships, and healing.
Edge Radio is for everyone and about everyone.
Edge is about working together.
Edge Radio is about recreating a beautiful body.
Edge is about community, synergy, and empowerment.
Edge is about being kind, compassionate, and loving to all.
And Edge Radio is about beauty and fashion.
各位观众 ，Edge Radio 是大家最好听的一个电台，不要忘记听哦。Yeah, I love Radio. You can hear all about the topic and join us soon.
Edge is about being on the edge and not jumping. Yes.
When people stop talking to each other, society is on the edge. Let's bring them back. Edge Radio, because truth still matters. Been feeling a little edgy lately? Listen to Edge Radio. That'll push you over the top.